Hey, what's up, friends? Grant Bolden here. Welcome back to the Speak Aloud podcast. Good to have you here with us today. Hey, excited for today's conversation about preventing speaker crime. I don't know. It's something to that effect. We're going to kind of put that out there and let you ponder what that might be. But joining us today, we've got Lauren Sergy. And so, Lauren, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Grant.
And so we're going to be talking about, this potential crime thing, a scam thing. Ultimately, is what we're going to be talking about that speakers need to be aware of. But before we get there, Lauren, maybe start by giving us a little bit of context on what does your speaking business look like? Who are you speaking to? What are you speaking about? And how does speaking fit into your world?
My speaking business is mostly centered on corporate and association type work. I specialize in helping people become better speakers and better communicators. So basically, if you are talking to people using your mouth, I help you do it better. And it takes form of a lot of keynote speaking, of course, as well as a lot of workshops and training sort of environments. So I work with, everyone from new hires right up to senior executive, but I've found a niche in the management, senior leadership, and executive areas because at those levels, they really need to bump up this skill and put on a good show. And I help them dissect it so it's not so mysterious and just become better communicators overall.
Gotcha. Is there any particular industries that you work in or any type of verticals? Because it's one of those challenging things where, that sounds like the nature of what you do it's for humans, it's for everybody, it's for people.
Yeah.
But trying to appeal to anybody and everybody is oftentimes very, very difficult. So anybody in particular that you try to focus on?
I tend to express it that this work is really good for high intensity industries. So these are industries where there's a lot of competition, where there's a lot of pressure to perform well. This can include government. I speak to a lot of government clients, especially municipalities, because there's pressure on both
Mhm.
their administration as well as the elected officials to do a good job of being in front of the crowds. But I also speak to a lot of people in finance, insurance, banking, um, that sort of area. A lot of people in academics, engineers, especially if the industry has a very information dense sort of area, sort of field that they need to talk to, and they
Yeah.
have to translate it for lay people. So that's where the engineering and the academics come in. I help them make their information accessible when they're speaking.
Gotcha.
I wouldn't say it's for absolutely everybody, but a nice thing about this area is that it has broad appeal. Everyone wants to communicate better,
Mhm.
which has been good for business.
Yeah, that helps. Now, you're located in Canada. Is the majority of the business that you're
Mhm.
doing in Canada? Do you do it a lot in the States, or and also is it more in person? Are you still doing anything virtual?
I'm still doing virtual. I work both in Canada and the US, so I've got my E1 visa to go down to the US and not get held up at customs
Yeah,
all that much, which is really nice. I just came back from Miami a couple of weeks ago working with a client down there. It is mostly in Canada. I'd say about 60-40 Canada versus US, and the majority of my US clients are virtual.
gotcha.
But I get down to your neck of the woods, 3 or 4 times a year,
Good.
and then across Canada as well.
Well, we appreciate you supporting our economy. All right. So, also maybe let's go back for a second here. How did you first get into speaking, and like how long have you been in this world?
I started speaking like formally for pay on stages in 2014, and I've been a member of the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers since 2016. I got into it because I was a librarian working in libraries who was much better at giving presentations than I was at dealing with the back end nonsense
Yeah.
in library world. And so I would speak at a lot of conferences. I would compel people to look at these boring databases that they did not want to look at. And people started coming up to me and saying, "Hey, that was an amazing presentation. Could you come back to our next conference and teach us how to present like that?" And the thing is, I've got a background in acting. I've done a lot of acting training, especially film acting, as well as English composition and classical rhetoric. So I've got the background for composing and delivering excellent speeches, plus the library knowledge, which we study how people process information.
Hmm.
And that combined, I'm like, yeah, I can absolutely teach you this. And I was having more fun doing that than I was working in libraries.
Yeah.
And I figured if librarians are asking for this, there's probably a bigger market. And I just slowly built up the business over the years by taking on clients, by doing additional training until it spun into its own thing.
Did you what kind of
Slow and steady.
like in those, especially in those early days though, when someone mentions to you like, "Hey, you're not too bad at this," and you feel like, "Hey, I feel like I'm not too bad at this, and maybe there's something here. It's one thing for you to kind of think that, or for someone to kind of reaffirm that in you. What were some of those early steps that you took, and maybe like what were some of the doubts, the fears, the insecurities that you had to deal with early on to make you feel like, no, I can actually do this. I'm not just like feeding myself a lie here or a story, but there is something here where I can provide value to others.
That's a great question because I've got my insecurities like anyone
We all
else.
do.
And at first, my assumption was always, you're being nice.
Yeah.
You're just being nice. You're just saying nice things. You don't know what to say about the talk, so you're complimenting the way that I deliver it. But what I started doing was overriding that part of my brain and saying, pay attention to what they're saying and pay attention to how many different people are telling you this same thing over and over and over. It's not one or two people asking you to help them, it's a lot. It's just about every conference you speak at, every training you deliver. That means something.
Yeah.
And they're giving you the message that your brain isn't giving you. So I took a deep breath and said, okay, do it scared. If you can't do it brave, do it scared and pretend on the outside that you're not, and just get your feet out there. So the early days did involve a lot of speaking for free. I did the Rotary Club circuit.
Hmm.
I contacted every single association and service group in my city just to get my stage time in and to refine and develop the talks and figure out what the market wanted.
Yeah.
And if an opportunity came in front of me, I did not say no for many years, eventually leading to a mild case of burnout, but I
Yeah.
know how to manage that now. And I always kept paying attention to what my clients were asking were asking for help with,
Yeah.
because that's where the content is. Can you help me with this? Yes, I can. Can you help me with this? No, I can't, but I know someone who can. Like, pay attention to what people are telling you and then respond to that.
Mm.
Because that's what I say to people who are interested in speaking. Your audience will tell you what they need from you.
Yeah.
And they're basing that off of what you are already offering, what they are already seeing you do. So pay attention and follow suit.
And so, how long into it were you also before you were able to go full time and all in on speaking? Because it sounds like were you doing kind of both in terms of the librarian stuff and also building the speaking business?
Yeah. Yeah, I did both for a number of years. The speaking side really started taking off in 2014, and I stayed working full time in libraries until 2018, towards the end of 2018. And at that point, the speaking work was bringing me in very close to the same income that I was earning in libraries. And libraries, you can earn a good income there. So it was starting to get par, but I was also really starting to feel the pressure of essentially having two full-time jobs.
Yeah.
I had my full-time library and then a full-time speaking business.
Right.
So I had to decide when to kind of cut the ties and go all in. I went all in December of 2018. And then, of course, the pandemic hit
Yeah.
1 year later. But at that point, people started pivoting to virtual, which I was not only already doing, but also was training people how to do.
Yeah.
So it slid into my overall business model to move in with the virtual work as well.
So since you started in 2014, we're able to really go all in 2018. Takes you obviously a couple of years there, which is not uncommon. But during that time,
Mhm.
like, how are you not getting discouraged or frustrated or wondering like, all right, like I see other people doing this. Why isn't it happening as fast for me? Or maybe I should just focus on the librarian thing. Because even like you mentioned, eventually you're kind of doing two full time deals, and I have to keep spinning this librarian plate because it's what provides for my family or puts food on the table or
Mhm.
whatever. But also like I'm chasing this dream, and so I got to put a lot of energy, effort, and just keep dumping coal in that fire. And so, are there times where you're just like, what am I doing? Like, why am I even trying to chase this? Are you wanting to quit or give up at some point?
Yes, for sure. That usually happens when I look at my calendar and I don't have anything on it a few months out.
Yeah.
That's when the fear sets in. And I think that's true for many self employed people.
Hmm.
Oh no, there's nothing on the calendar. That was my last gig.
Yeah.
And whenever that thought happens to me, even now, I start looking at job advertisements, but then realize that they're not paying as well
Mm.
as what I bring in for my business. The way, though, that I overcome that fear and that anxiety to give up, throw in the towel, is I look at how my business has been doing over the past couple of years and I look for patterns. When do the gigs come in? When do I actually do all the speaking? When is the slow time that I know I'm not going to get any inquiries? And I write that down. so that when that fear grips me, I can look back at my data and say, slow down, Lauren. You know that this is a dead season. Enjoy it, because in 2 months, you're going to be run off your feet again.
Yeah.
So don't worry. No one called in June.
Yeah.
They're calling in July because they're planning for October.
Yeah.
So when you pay attention to those patterns and those cycles of your business, it's much easier to ride out the hard times.
That's good. What kind of data are you tracking? Like, what are the stuff that you're looking at that in those slower peak or slower seasons that you kind of look at and be like, oh, okay, that's right, I forgot. Like, yeah, we're good. Like, what are the things that you're paying attention to?
I don't pay attention to a ton of data, to be honest, but what I really find valuable is when does all of the work happen? When is demand the highest? And I keep that demand focus on in terms of both the corporate training and the workshops that I do and the keynotes. I sort of treat those separately.
Yeah.
Where am I doing most of that work during the year? And then where do those people who have hired me, at what point in the year, how far in advance have they contacted me? And what months do those tend to happen in?
Yep.
Because as I'm sure you are very well familiar with, Grant, we do have, for many of us, speaking business is kind of cyclical.
Yep.
It's kind of seasonal. February through May is spring season. September through beginning of December is winter season. That's when I'm busy.
Yep.
The other times, it can be crickets.
Right.
But knowing that, I can say, okay, it's okay. The calls will start coming in at this month, and they do. So that's really, really valuable. When the calls do not come in, again, pandemic, when everything blew up, or the early days in my business, I manage the anxiety by seeking the work myself, by putting myself out there, by recording videos, by making myself visible, and by reaching out for easy to land work. So I'll do more free gigs
Yeah.
at that time, just to make sure I'm still speaking
Yeah.
to organizations who normally would not be able to afford me anyway. You do a bit of good, you keep speaking, you keep your visibility up, and then the work comes in again, and now you've got your paycheck.
Well, and one thing you alluded to there in terms of just kind of timing and metrics is that when you're busy and when you're slow, it kind of falls into two different buckets. Are you talking about like, when you're speaking versus like when you're actually booking gigs? Because like you said, maybe like
Mhm.
there's a stretch where like I'm not on the road at all, but I'm booking a lot of gigs. And maybe the
Yeah.
opposite is true where I'm on the road all the time and I'm doing a lot of gigs that I have booked, several months before, but I'm not necessarily booking many more at that time. And it could be, it could be months or stretches where you're doing both and the phone's ringing a lot and I'm on the plane a lot. And it could be months where nothing's happening. But the point being is like that you monitor all that you track all of that
Yes.
you look at all that. So whenever you have what could be defined as a slow season, subjectively, and it's easy to kind of get caught up in the emotion of it, you're able to kind of look back objectively and be like, oh, wait, actually, it's always like that this time of year, and realize that,
Yeah.
nothing's wrong. Everything's fine. Take a deep breath.
It's so easy to be scared. It's so
Yeah.
easy to get scared when we're depending on ourselves. So having that, it's okay. It's okay. You knew this was going to happen. Enjoy it,
Yeah.
because in 2 months, you're going to wish it was quiet again.
Big time.
It's good to have that there to lean on.
All right, we teased it a long time ago. Let's jump into kind of the main topic of today. So recently, you got pitched on a what seemed to be a very convincing speaker scam. I've seen a few of these that floated out here
Yeah.
over the years. I've heard of different speakers who have been targets on these, but you had mentioned like this is something that you have heard multiple other speakers have been hit with, and again, because it's very convincing, we want to just kind of help put the word out there of like, hey, be heads up on this. And so, first of all, like, kind of paint the picture here. What happened?
So I got an email inquiry through my website contact form. Nothing unusual, right? And the inquiry was very simple. It was from supposedly, it was from the director of a machining company based out of Australia. And the way that they wrote out the organizational name, Elmas Australia, tied it back to a large machining company that does have a global presence. So, okay, a little odd for a director to be reaching out, but not unheard of.
Yeah.
I deal with a lot of management. And the inquiry was really straightforward. Hi, we're having a technology summit, our annual technology summit in Toronto on June 8th. We're looking for a keynote speaker. Are you available on that date? Very cut and dried. And that was good, because usually serious inquiries coming from my contact form are short and sweet.
Yeah.
Very to the point. So yes, I am available that day. They contacted me about a month and a half in advance, which is short notice. But myself and many of my colleagues have noticed this shortening in booking time.
Yep.
So again, not unusual, not unheard of. Yes, here's my fee. The guy gets back to me really quick. That sounds great. And I said, what talk do you want? Could we please get on the phone? I'd love to do a Zoom call with you so we can talk about the event and I make sure that I tailor my content so that it suits, so that it's really targeted towards your audience. Again, standard thing that I tell every client. Your fees are great. The talk that we want you to give is, and he listed a talk that was something related to leadership in times of change.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very generic title, and that caught me because I'm like, that one's not on my website, but I speak at a lot of conferences, and very often the title of the talk gets changed depending on the theme of the conference
Yeah.
so that it suits their things. And I'm like, this easily could have been a talk that I gave, or it could have been the title of a conference. So I wrote back, said, that's not on my website. Could you tell me where you saw that title? I want to make sure you're not confusing me with one of my colleagues, with one of the other CAPS Canadian
Mm-hmm.
speakers. Just in case, right? If they're scrambling to fill a last minute slot, it's easy to get people mixed up. And the reply was, no, it's definitely you. You were recommended by a colleague who saw you speak. I'm sorry, I don't have the information from that conference. You came highly recommended. I get this all the time. Okay, no problem. So I'm still pushing for that Zoom call,
Mm-hmm.
but he's in Australia. There's a 16-hour time difference. It's really hard to line up time. And he's being a bit cagey about that, nothing overly weird. So I said, okay, well, I can do a talk like that, has a communication spin on it. I put together an abstract. He said, that sounds great. Okay, I'll get you a formal proposal that you can sign off on, and I'll send you the deposit for my fees. Always collect a deposit before you book your travel. Always,
Mm-hmm.
always. So I sent him this contract and he waits a couple of weeks, comes back with apologies that he's in business. He's at business meetings with another machining company in Australia. And this whole time, by the way, I am checking out their website. I am looking them up in the Australian Yellow Pages. I am checking their LinkedIn. I do my research
Yeah.
and it all checks out. And then he writes back. So I push him a couple more times. Do you want me to release this date or not? We're a month out, buddy. Sign the contract or get off my email. He signs the contract and says, I'm going to have my colleague in Canada issue you a certified check. This was the first red flag, and it was a big one because the deposit amount does not warrant a certified check. And this is what I really want people listening to understand, that different payments, different types of payment comes with different kinds of baggage, if you will. A certified check is done when you go into a bank and you say, Mr. Bank Teller, please stamp this in a way that verifies that I have the money in my account. The amount that I was asking for would have been chump change to them. It would have been a rounding error. It's not worth the bother of a certified check. But once you get a certified check and it leaves your hands, it cannot be canceled. And that's where the scam starts to come in. So I'll have my colleague send you a certified check. I raise my eyebrow and I'm like, sure, let's see where this is going. A couple days later, he writes again. So my Canadian colleague, and this is the first, he hasn't used that language, Canadian colleague, business partner. He hasn't used the language business partner before. This is new,
Mm-hmm.
another red flag. Business partner has will issue you the check and send you a FedEx tracking number so that we make sure that you get it. I'll let you know when it goes through. Couple days later, okay, Lauren, my business partner has sent the check, but when he sent it out, I noticed a discrepancy. We didn't issue you a check for, and I'll fudge my numbers slightly here. We didn't issue you a check for $4,100. We issued you a check for $41,100. I'm going to try to get this check canceled. I'll get back to you as soon as possible. I'm like, he's going to reply in 10 minutes saying that he can't cancel the check
Mm-hmm.
because now I know what the scam is. In 5 minutes, he exceeded my expectations. In 5 minutes, he writes back and says, it's a certified check. We can't cancel it. Could you please go ahead, deposit this check, let me know once you do, and I will send you instructions for reimbursing us the overpay.
Hmm.
This is going to be to the tune of an overpayment of about $38,000.
Yeah.
This is a big chunk of money. The way the certified check scam works, and it works with certified checks, money orders, and bank drafts, is that the scammer sends you a fake check, but these checks are convincing enough that they routinely fool bank tellers and bank managers. Because it is certified, the victim who deposits the check, they have access that instant to those funds in their account. They can use those funds like cash. The instruction will be to send us a certified check back or to send us a wire transfer for the overpay. And then before the bank actually clears the check for real, before the bank or the victim realizes it's a fake check, the victim has sent them good money.
Money's gone. Yeah.
Money is gone. And this won't be, sometimes it's for small amounts. Apparently, this happens on Facebook Marketplace a lot, but sometimes it's for very large amounts. And these scams are really convincing. So I knew, like, at that instant, I didn't even reply to his email. I'm like, whatever, buddy, you're a write-off. This gig is not real. I did call the hotel that he told me it was being sent at the next day. And that was another component. There was no event website, but when I'm doing gigs for internal or invitation only events, that's not unusual
Yeah.
for there not to be an event website. So he told me what hotel it was at, Four Seasons, downtown Toronto. Fancy, fancy, right? I called them up, said, I just want to make sure that there is this conference booked at this hotel. And they said, because of client confidentiality, we can't tell you, but you should trust your instincts on this one.
Wow.
There's no conference. There's no conference. It was a scam. So I didn't reply. Problem being, though, is that I had, when I sent the deposit invoice, also sent an image of a voided check, because most of my clients pay by direct deposit and I was trying to speed things up.
Yeah.
So now there's the element that they have my bank account number.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I called up the bank. I'm like, this is what happened. They immediately canceled that checking account and I had to open up a new one. So some annoyance in transferring over, automatic payments for bills and stuff, but my funds were secure. Nothing was broached. I didn't send them any money. Meanwhile, I'm documenting this in the Canadian Professional Speakers Association's Facebook group.
Yeah.
Said, just to let you know, this is what's going on. Here's the full story for how they were trying to get me. And a couple other speakers said, I have had requests for that same talk title. Not the same person, not the same company, but the same talk title. So I thought, okay, I'm putting this out on the NSA, the National Speakers Association, our sister organization in the US. I'm putting this out on their Facebook too. And another fellow there said I had the exact same one.
Wow.
Same name, same company, same date, same hotel, same talk, everything. And it was the fact that the guy wouldn't get on the phone with him that was making him uncomfortable. So these stories are becoming very convincing.
Yeah.
They used to be super easy to spot. Will you come to some random company in a continent, 2/3 of the world over, that has really no interest in bringing in a speaker from so far away because it's so expensive, or for a organization that doesn't make sense? They used to be easy to spot, but they're getting better.
Yeah.
And of course, being a former librarian, I went looking this stuff up because you can't let these threads go. Law firms are common targets for this scam as well. And as I was going through different legal association website, their comment was the same. They are getting more and more convincing at weaving their stories. They will string victims along for much longer so that you become agitated to book this gig, or you become convinced that it's real. And they're just getting better about it. So you got to know those little signs. That's why I'm making such a big deal about the certified check. That was the red flag.
That's crazy. Crazy. Well, first of all, thanks for sharing with us all that. That is wild. I think that, a couple key takeaways there is, I know, like, my wife and I were watching on Netflix recently, some con artists, something, and you watch it, and on the outside, you're just like, well, how could anyone ever fall for that? But like you're saying is, like, sometimes it is, you are so drawn into this thing. And, as a speaker, especially if you are a speaker who's earlier in your speaking career and you're like, holy cow, this could be the most money I've ever been paid. It's perhaps an international gig. This could be it, and like and you just want a gig, regardless of all the other hype and pomp and circumstance that may go along with it. And so there's just an excitement that you start to lose like your own like rational like, hang on, wait a second, like something's not adding up here, something's not making
Yeah,
sense there. And so like what would be the key takeaways for you? Like one thing I wrote down was, I've seen versions of this and it's always something, some type of international company or an international gig. And so I've seen a couple of
yeah,
versions of this of, I'm based in the US, but these were gig opportunities that were in the UK. And so it was,
I
some type
got
of, like you mentioned, either a time zone difference of, hey, it makes it harder for us to communicate, or we can't hop
yeah,
on a call or Zoom or anything like that, or like, the time zone difference makes it easier for us to kind of avoid you. Or it's also something where, because it's international, then I have to, either do a wire or some type of certified check or do a money order or some type of like non-traditional payment that we would normally get paid in. And it's interesting, like you said, even though you looked this up, this is like a real company that exists in Australia doing exactly what they described. It doesn't necessarily mean that like that person works for them. Um,
yeah,
so what else, like any other like lessons or things that stood out to you from that other speakers should be like, hey, be heads up on this.
yeah. Number one lesson is do not assume that you'll spot it right away. Because again, this was very nicely done.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty suspicious person and I check the sites and I check their links in and I, track back and all of that sort of thing. And it looked normal. The everything that happened up until the comment of the certified check is stuff that I've experienced with other clients. But a big one that I would definitely recommend looking out for and that I will be doing in the future is that no transactions are made, no contracts are signed unless you have a Zoom, ideally a face to face Zoom call
Mm-hmm.
or a phone call. There must be a phone call. You have to make voice to voice contact. Um, Scams like this happen from centers all over the world. And I imagine that a lot of them have a lot of trouble faking accents
Yeah.
from different regions, from the regions that they're claiming to be from. There has to be a phone call. Um, if you are in doubt, get a hold of the venue
Mm.
and double check with them. And then understand how your payments work. Because, like I said, that was the red flag. And it's only because I find financial stuff really interesting. And I was like, yeah, this is why you're issuing a certified check.
Yeah.
As soon as he said that, I knew it was going on because it makes no sense for a payment to be issued otherwise. If you want to be really safe with your payments, you could say, I will only accept payment by credit card. So, open up a Stripe account, whatever. Anyone can figure that out. But understand that you're going to take a hit
Yeah.
from credit card processing fees. Otherwise, the vast majority of my clients, I know exactly who they are. I'm very confident in doing direct deposit. But for stuff like this, the extra layer of protection could be that third party payment system,
Yeah.
which would be really good. I would be cautious of any organization that is promising a big, elaborate event, but they are not contacting you through an event planner or through a person at their company who is dedicated to event organization. I rationalized in my own head why it was the director. He's probably part of a board.
Yeah.
And they're looking for a last minute fill in. They're scrambling, so it's all hands on deck. That doesn't happen very often. It has happened to me before, but not often.
Yeah.
So the big thing is, will they get on the phone with you and how are they wanting to issue payment?
Another question I had was, okay, so the initial outreach came via your website form. So did they include any type of phone number or email address? Like, and what was the email? Was it from their company?
It was from their company, Sean at elmas.elmasptyltd .au.
You've got it seared into your brain.
I've got it seared. I Googled this so many times. And when I went looking up that domain, a website came up. On that website, the only way you could get a hold of people was by contact form, which is not unusual for big companies. They don't want to give
Yeah.
their names out. There were a couple of weird location discrepancies buried in this website. So they said their headquarters was in Belgium, but they gave the wrong town.
Uh,
And this took me hours to find
yeah.
Grant, and it was because I was really mad and didn't have anything better to do at the time. So that took a lot of digging. And eventually I started Googling I did some digging into the physical, like geographical address that this company was claiming to have on their website. And there was a company by that name that used to be there that is still listed in their yellow pages. And I only figured out that that company is no longer at that location by doing a Google satellite search and actually going through the bays.
Sheesh. That's commitment.
Don't get a librarian mad because we will
Wow.
dig.
No kidding.
So, yeah.
The
So
like,
those were the weird things. They were very good about this, though. The website looked good.
yeah. Two other things that kind of stood out there is
Yeah.
one, like just trusting your gut, and which makes it challenging, especially if you are a newer speaker, of going like, I
Mhm.
haven't developed enough of a gut to know if this is legit or not, but the longer you do it, the more you start to figure out like, okay, I've done enough gigs to know this one feels different, this one feels weird, or what
Yeah.
they're asking for, or how they want to do the contract or the travel and how they want it to be paid or reimbursed, or something feels weird here, like pay attention to that, trust your gut. But the other thing I think was valuable is it sounded like, okay, I've got some suspicions that something's off here, but it wasn't necessarily validated until you started comparing notes with other speakers and,
Yeah.
a Facebook group or just talking to other peers and colleagues. And I think it reiterates the point of it's so important to not go at this alone and realize that, yes, it feels weird at times of like being friends with all your competitors, but like no one speaker is going to be able to speak at anything and everything. So having those speakers that are friends that you can talk to, you can compare notes of like, okay, this feels weird to me. Does this feel weird to anybody? Oh, wait, I know of someone who had the same thing. Let me ask them. Let me get back to you. That sort of thing that just kind of, again, can add some credibility and validity to like, no, you're not crazy. Like this is like something is way off here, or maybe I've never heard of a thing like this, but you're correct to lean into your gut reaction that something feels off. So the importance
Yeah.
of being in community with other speakers is so important.
It really is. The community absolutely matters. This is how we find out from one another what to look out for. You mentioned the church in the UK. I've gotten those
Yeah,
emails too. So have all of my colleagues. There was one a Baptist church from Germany. It's like, why are you trying to
yeah, yeah,
hire a communications expert in Canada?
yeah,
For like, this makes no sense. And so you share stories like this with other members of your communities, and we might be competitors, but we're not all going after the same gigs. We
yeah.
don't all speak on the same thing. Like, you will far benefit from networking with your quote unquote competitors. I call them my colleagues,
Yep.
than you are from trying to be an island unto yourself. And then when stuff like this does go down, and you might be feeling a little rotten, you might be thinking, oh, how did I miss that? Oh, I'm so stupid. You go in and you share, and then five other people will say, yeah, that happened to
Yeah,
me too. It happens to smart people too.
very much so. Lauren, this has been super insightful and very, very helpful to the speaking community. We appreciate you taking the time to do this. If people want to find out more about you, what you're up to, also tell us about the new book that you got out.
Oh yeah, it's the easiest way to find me is at laurensergy.com, LAURENSERGY.com. You can check out my YouTube channel at lsergy. I am on LinkedIn as well. And then this is the book. Look, I've got it right over
Okay, you
there.
were ready.
That was my pandemic baby. Unmute, how to master virtual meetings and reclaim your sanity. And this is just a quick little read that I put together because my clients were saying, it's driving us nuts, Lauren. How do we have good video conferences?
Yeah,
So I wrote a book about it.
awesome. Very good. Lauren, thanks for the time. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Grant. Take care.